And so, you know how like in basketball, when the guys got to shoot a free throw, the coach calls the timeout for freezing. So they froze me, right? They had all kind of people speaking and going through this and just meandering. Then finally, you know, they give me the award, and it was like, put a chill through me because I didn't know this title was coming with the award. So it said Lifetime Achievement in Comics. I'm like, lifetime, it's not over yet. You know? So I kind of ignored that part and went to the next line and it said, you know, Father of the Black Age of Comics, you know, in quotations. The idea of the Black Age of Comics was something that I came up with through a variety of life's experiences. I came of age during the countercultural movement of the late 60s and the Black Power movement of the late 60s. So I was caught in between. Some circles they called me a Libby, which meant a Black hippie. In other circles, I was a Black Panther, which meant a revolutionary. So, you know, you had this stuff going. And up the middle, I was always a visual artist and thinker and trying to figure out how to make a life for myself while listening to Jimi Hendrix. So, you know, I kind of had that kind of rotation going. And I worked downtown cooking steaks in the Prudential building on the 40th floor. They thought I was older, you know, the job interview, I had a little hair on my face. So the dude's like, you're 20, right? Like, So they hired me, trained me to cook. Make a long story short, from the 40th floor, there was an observation day. So in 1968, unfortunately, Dr. King was murdered. So WGN, which was the TV station, was broadcasting up there. We couldn't leave the building because there was lockdown. And so, you know, we're seeing scenes that didn't pass censor and edit. So, you know, that had an impact on it. Then later on in the summer, we had the police riots with the Chicago Convention. Same scenario, we're on lockdown, can't go out. So that kind of hit me. So I'm thinking, okay, as a young guy, what do I do? And I thought, well, I like comics, I like artwork, I'm going to try to dedicate a part of my artistic practice. I didn't use those words then, but that's what it meant. Dedicate a part of my artistic practice to positive change. You know, and so, you know, I knew then that, you know, comic books cultivate a fantasy life. And if your fantasy life is positive and grounded, your reality will be more positive and grounded. So from the Black side, we were doing things like flipping the script. You know, we evolved from certain terms being negative, meaning you put a positive spin on the term being Black. So you had Black Power, things like that. And later on, as I started looking at the comic book industry, you know, shoot down some years now, okay, because here I am, you know, we're talking around 79, 81 when I was developing the novel, Protector of the Pyramids. That book opened the door to the Black Age. You know, looking at the comics industry, which you had the Golden Age, the Silver Age, you had the Marvel Age. So I thought, well, if you're coming from a Black or African or urban perspective, and you now add independent to that as the definition, then that puts you in the Black Age, you're coming from the Black Age. And as we proceed with this, I entertain any questions in my practice also. I do fine art. Believe it or not, I was an art therapist for a while. So I kind of packed it in, burning it from, you know, all angles. And it's been a good life and continues to be. We look forward to having your questions and get on with the excitement of this panel.
Jiba.
Oh, I get no introduction?
No, that's it.
And then we got this dude.
He needs no introduction, and that's why
I'm just speechless. No, seriously, Jiba Anderson's work is, I first came across it a few years ago through his book, The Horseman, and what's really amazing about his work is that he's using a lot of African diasporic belief structures to create the powers of the character and the kind of background of the characters. And to me, truly is one of the foremost artists in this, in what we call like this kind of Black Age of comics movement. And it's a local artist, again, from Chicago. And again, and is also an educator, activist. And I'm not going to jack up this introduction any longer, but I really love the work, and I'm glad that he's in the book and as in the staff.
me too.
Yes, and Damian is too.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Well, okay, I guess y'all cleaned that up, so we're all good.
Yeah, hi. How you guys doing? You call me Jib, or that dude, whatever. It really is an honor to be here today, to be on this panel. In all honesty, you know, I've known Turtel for quite some time, and actually, it's kind of poignant, you know what I mean, in terms of the history of like you being the progenitor of the Black Age of comics, because of the fact that, you know, you were coming of age, you came of age in the late 60s and the 70s, you know. I was born in the 70s, right? So the generation that we call Generation X, I've actually coined it to be sort of the post-revolution generation. You know, my generation was the generation that was born during and post-civil rights movement. We were born during, you know, gay rights, you know what I mean, the evolution of women's rights, so on and so forth. And so, you know, coming up, politically also coming up from a unique situation where, you know, I am of two worlds in a sense. My mother's from West Africa and my father's from the States. So, you know, some of my friends call me an African for that. But it allowed for a very unique and global view. So, and also being a comic book fan, you know, just from a kid, I have my father to thank for that. When I was like 5 years old, he gave me my first comic book, which was Batman, who still is like my #1 guy. You know what I mean? Give an extra shout out for The Dark Knight, one of the best movies ever made. But in that, my path to comics was clear. I wanted to do comics ever since I was 10. Now, in my whole education, not just of comics, but of art, I also had a unique upbringing. I was very fortunate to have some very, very political artists train me in some very, very different aspects. Like, I learned to paint fresco, which is a dead art, from you know, a mentor. His name, and by the way, this is not his real name, Steve Pablo Davis. He was a Jewish artist who painted with Diego Rivera back in the days, and actually his work is in the DIA and the big mural. And so my political upbringing was part and parcel brought up with, you know, the post-civil rights movement, definitely Black Power, Black Pride. I mean, I lived in an African household, so, you know, I always had that with me. And then also, you know, I had this really radical, liberal kind of base. And also, you know, developing this sort of global view. And so, in the 80s when I came up, you know, I came up during the Black Age. This is when I saw these comic books first come out, you know what I mean, with characters that featured me. And, you know, I observed it from, you know, from the beginning, from Turtel's stuff. You know, what really got me into the mix is everybody, and I'm sure everybody in this room knows, it's like the seminal Brother Man. Y'all remember that book, Brother Man? Sims Brothers? You know what I mean? That was like the turning point. And then at the same time, it's like growing up in the 80s, you also had other political artistic movements going on, most notably hip hop. So, you know what I mean? So it's like growing up in this whole hip hop independent mentality just carried it on with me. And as it developed and so on and so forth, and as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do as an artist, two things solidified me being in comics. Number one was the birth of Image, and number two was the birth of Milestone Media. And what those two showed me is that, number one, with Milestone, it showed me that I could create characters that looked like me and people would receive it. And with Image, it showed me that I could create characters that look like me and own my own characters and get paid. So in terms of like convincing my family that's what I wanted to do, that was my argument, and so they had no argument.